I'm going to welcome all the guests one by one. We have Mahua Mautra joining us from the Trinamool Congress. We have Tehseen Poonawala right here, one of the people who's been behind MASUKA for a long time and has really been pushing for this. Devesh Thakur is joining us, representing the BJP, joining us online out there. We have Rakesh Sinha who's joining us, but he's also going to be discussing a particularly interesting FIR that has been filed actually against him in West Bengal, and we are going to turn to that as well in just a couple of minutes. But before I come to all of you, let me just go to Shashi Tharoor, who actually was speaking at the Constitution Club later in the evening also, and talking about what the law should have. Shashi, while I'm talking to you, I'm going to start flashing up some of the provisions of MASUKA. I won't take too much time doing it myself, because I know you want to talk about it as well. What is it that you think can actually be done to make sure that mob lynchings can be dealt with? And do we need a separate law for it, or is it just a question of actually being able to implement the existing sections of the IPC which are already in place?
Well, no, I mean, the existing sections of the IPC you're thinking about relate to the commission of murder, and there are, of course, provisions on assault and so on, but we have nothing that responds to the specific phenomenon of groups of people attacking innocent Indian citizens and others, foreigners as well, on our soil, and expecting to get away with impunity because their identity is submerged in the anonymity of a mob. So the concept of mob lynching includes both plural attackers, which is obviously not necessarily imagined in a normal murder provision, and it includes, of course, the commission of a crime which may fall short of murder, which include beating, assault, stripping, various kinds of whipping and other kinds of humiliation, which we have seen in 14, 15 incidents in the last couple of years. In our country, we've seen Africans attacked because of the color of their skin. We've seen Northeasterners attacked because of their appearance. We've seen a young man in Delhi, a fan of the Prime Minister's, lynched for telling people not to urinate on the road in violation of Swachh Bharat. We've seen all sorts of cases. And we've, of course, seen the more celebrated and well-known cases of people who have been lynched by mobs, stoked up into a fury over alleged violations of their sanctified faith in the cow. Now, all of these things have created an atmosphere in the country that needs a special response, because if existing laws were enough, these things wouldn't have happened
Shashi,
and been allowed to continue to happen.
Right. Shashi, if I could just get you in. Look, one thing is to say we need a separate law, which is fine. But a lot of people will say that actually what is required is just the implementation of the laws you had. And if, for example, you could have a new law, but if a state government or a central government or any government says, we're not going to really follow this through, we're not going to put all of this into effect, why would somebody be actually, how would a new law be any more effective than the old ones?
Well, if it's the law, the state government no longer has the option to say that they will not implement it, right? So the point is, a law by definition is something the government is obliged to implement.
There are laws against murder today. So there are laws against murder today. You should be prosecuting the people who are lynching. They should be taken away. They should be punished. You can punish people for murder even today under the existing laws. The problem is that it's not being done in an effective way.
No, you should, but is it happening? I mean, one of the concerns, for example, is laxity of policing. And this draft law actually attempts to put the onus on the SHO and on the police establishment, both to prevent such crimes and to be responsible for their effective prosecution. I think it's important we realize, first of all, that a draft law like this is also about raising consciousness across the board, raising consciousness in the political establishment that there is a specific problem that calls for an extraordinary response. And once consciousness is raised, I agree, passage of the law must be followed by implementation. I said this at the Constitution Club press conference. If a law is not properly implemented, then of course it doesn't serve any good purpose to anybody. So clearly all these have to be happened. The consciousness has to be raised, legal provisions must be enacted, implementation must follow. But if the law is designed in such a way that there are incentives for implementation, that the police feel that they will suffer if they don't follow its provisions, if the district magistrate feels there is onus on him if he doesn't act, if there are provisions in the judicial code as well as in the police performance that would actually affect the careers of people who fail to prevent or prosecute mob lynching, then the law might be better and more effectively implemented.
All right.
But we have to try it to see.
Shashi Tharoor, thank you so much for joining us, sort of recapping a lot of what you said earlier in the day also, including at the Constitution Club, why you feel a law is actually required. Let me just open up, and Rakesh Sinha, I'm going to come to you about the FIR in West Bengal and some of the other possible areas where you think that laws could be misused, but specifically on this, do you think a new law is required to deal with mob lynchings, to put it onto a certain platform?
At least this is initiated a discussion on mob lynching and it's a legal remedy. So principally I am not against this. In democracy you can have as number of laws to curb incidents and crimes. But most important thing is that, Bikram, suppose I am a policeman, I am in charge of a thana, and I am not going to do anything, I am not identifying the criminal, either because of the political boss or due to my own inefficiency, then no law can be remedy. Yeah. I am giving one example. Kartik Ghosh was killed in Bengal, but the police was silent. Police is not acknowledging that he was killed by the mob. There is a conspiracy theory of his killing. Sujit in Kerala, there can be a number of examples. You can also say about the clerk, you can say about the Junaid. I am not talking about it is not a question of Hindu and Muslim. It is a question of mob lynching. Sujit, a 26-year-old boy, was killed in Kerala because there is a CPM rule, so there is no action by the police. People were arrested, they were relieved. It's a question.
So you're saying if the authorities don't want to act, they will not act and no amount of laws?
The most important thing, which I expect from Mr. Tharoor also, that we are not addressing, that is the police reform. Okay. Unless until you go for the police reform, as many
but of
laws,
course that will take time. Tehseen, before I go to the others, Tehseen, respond to that. And essentially what he's saying is part of what I was saying to Shashi Tharoor, that if police or a government does not want to act, no matter what the laws you have, it won't be effective.
That's a fantastic question. That was one of the main debating points we had on why the need for a separate law. And specifically to his point on this particular aspect, it is mandatory for a mob incident to be investigated by no less than an officer, the inspector rank. However, he has to shut the case or file a charge sheet within 3 months. If he fails to do so, it will be investigated by no less than Inspector General, and the matter goes straight to the magistrate. We also have provisions in the law. What we propose, of course, is the magistrate is not less than 7 years of experience. So it's not a new ground magistrate.
I'm just reading out some. I'm just reading out some of this. So you're proposing a maximum punishment of life term, fine of 5 lakhs for convicts. Dissemination of offensive material to be made a separate offence. That's something you've got. Suspension of concerned areas SHO until a time-bound judicial probe. Now, aren't some of these slightly excessive? I mean, having a suspension of a SHO till an inquiry is done.
So this was something very important and very hotly debated. The reason is, none of us believe that an SHO has no knowledge that 300 people have...
somebody is murdered, someone in the SHO suspended.
Let me just come to it. Let me explain to it. I'll take exactly 45 seconds. An SHO cannot not have knowledge that 300 people have assembled with swords and is entering, say, your bedroom, Bikram, to see what meat is in your fridge.
No, but he may not know, if there are 10 people who have done it, and that's also mob lynching.
However,
Junaid was murdered by 6-7 people. It wasn't murdered by 200.
Correct. Therefore, this is not one straight jacket that fits all. Therefore, wherever an incident of mob lynching happens, the matter first goes straight to a magistrate. The SHO immediately comes under a magistrate inquiry where the facts are put aside. So in case the magistrate has been blocked by a mob who does not allow him or her to act and say save Rakeshji's life, the SHO will not be suspended. Therefore, we take the onus out of the police and put it to the magistrate, because police have a habit of saving the police. But please imagine another situation. And an SHO, how does an SHO in an area not know 300 people have assembled in a mob?
But if it's 300 people, you got this is a blanket. I'm saying
no, it's not blanket.
Will be done by 5 people.
Therefore, it's not blanket. Therefore, it is a proposal in extreme situations. However,
others are less stringent. Provision for time-bound judicial inquiry, investigation to be conducted by senior police officer, designated judges for trial and appeal, special rights, and mandatory compensation. So those are some of the other provisions
25
which
lakhs,
are there in this.
25 lakhs.
Right. Devesh, just wanted to get your reaction to this. A new law for dealing with mob lynching.
Was it me?
Yes.
Well, as far as the introduction of the law is concerned, I would agree with Mr. Tharoor if the law acts as a preventive for these things happening. As simple as that. But I would agree with Mr. Rakesh Sinha when he says the implementation of that It requires lots of police reform, especially at the lower level, and the true intentions of the government in power in the particular state. Because we have a very recent and a very fresh example, Vikram, over here, is that after Nirbhaya, if anything, so much stricter laws had been introduced. But I think the gang rapes have increased in this country.
Okay.
So it's all on the implementation, it's on the sensitivity of the lower investigating staff which matters. Otherwise, you can go on getting laws. You can definitely, if it, as I said, if it acts as a preventive, it is most effective, it's most welcome.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just another law.
Mama, I just want to get you in on this, and then there's some question. I think Rakesh also wants to throw at you on other things. At the end of the day, having a specific law does focus attention on mob lynching, so that at the end of the day, including in the debate today, we saw BJP leaders, we've seen the Prime Minister saying something must be done, not enough is being done. Does a law make it simpler to do, or is it a question of implementation, as many others have been saying?
No, Vikram, it's obviously both, but you know, it's very tragic if the Prime Minister stands up and says that there's, and the ruling party stand up and say that something must be done, because they are the ones who are in the seat. And I think, as Mr. Tharoor said earlier, he says, where you stand depends on where you sit. So the BJP, when it was out of power, sang a very different tune to what they're singing now in power. And I think the question of the law and the question of the implementation of the law are obviously being debated and are very important. But what is more important is this all-pervasive impunity with which lynchings are taking place, because they're so sure, especially in BJP-ruled states, that they will not face justice. And that's what's happened. I mean, after the Una incident, the Prime Minister himself said there would be a special court to try the killers of the 7 youths, and we haven't seen that.